First contact with terror. The holographic projector in the Great Chamber of the Galactic Alliance flickered with images of destruction that made even the oldest delegates flinch. The once thriving planet of Nebulon 7, with its crystal cities and azure oceans, was now a charred husk. Billions of lives extinguished in less than a solar day. First speaker Zoral, a tall being with iridescent skin that rippled with distress, addressed the assembled representatives. This marks the 17th world lost to the Voidborn in the past cycle alone. Their fleet advances toward the core systems without pause or mercy. The chamber erupted in voices, some digital, some telepathic, others vibrating the very air with bass tones that made the walls tremble. Admiral Kresh of the Alliance Defense Fleet slammed his chitinous appendage against the control panel. The towering insectoid's compound eyes flashed with barely contained fury. We have deployed our most advanced battle groups, 10,000 warships from over 300 worlds, yet the Voidborn cut through our defenses like they weren't even there. Their technology is beyond anything we possess. The hologram shifted to display footage of the last major engagement. Sleek Alliance vessels arranged in mathematically perfect formations fired synchronized energy barrages at the approaching Voidborn ships. Massive obsidian structures that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. The Alliance weapons splashed harmlessly against invisible barriers, while the Voidborn responded with beams of dark energy that sliced through Alliance shields and hulls with terrifying ease. Elder Thune, the ancient Vex philosopher whose species had been among the founders of the Alliance 10 millennia ago, spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. Our analysts have discovered a pattern in their attacks. They follow strict tactical algorithms. Perfect, emotionless, predictable in their perfection. Yet this predictability has not helped us counter them. Because prediction means nothing when you can't match their firepower, said Admiral Kresh bitterly. First speaker Zoral raised all four hands to silence the rising murmurs. There is one option we have not yet explored. The chamber grew quiet as the delegates sensed the gravity in Zoral's tone. The humans, Zoral said simply. The silence transformed into shocked gasps and outraged protests. The primitives from the solar system. Admiral Kresh's mandibles clicked in derision. They've barely mastered FTL travel. Their technology is centuries behind ours. And yet, Elder Thune interjected, his ancient eyes glowing faintly. They are the only species to have successfully repelled a Voidborn scout fleet. The hologram changed again, displaying grainy footage of a battle near the third planet of the Sol system, Earth. A single human vessel, crewed by Alliance standards, executed maneuvers that defied conventional space tactics. It darted and weaved in seemingly random patterns, its attacks coming from unexpected vectors, its defensive measures changing constantly. The Voidborn scouts, after suffering unexpected losses, had withdrawn. This encounter occurred 3 Earth years ago, explained Zoral. We monitored it but did not interfere, as per our containment protocol for volatile species. Volatile is putting it mildly, muttered a delegate from the Proxima sector. Their entire history is written in blood. They fight even themselves constantly. Perhaps, said Elder Thune, that is precisely what makes them valuable now. Zoral nodded. The Voidborn have never encountered a species like humans, where we see patterns and follow optimal strategies. Humans embrace chaos. Where we perfect a single approach, they experiment with countless methods. Where we seek consensus, they thrive on dissent and competition. Admiral Kresh's antennae twitched skeptically. You want to invite these barbarians into our alliance? After we specifically quarantined their system to prevent their violent tendencies from spreading. Not into the alliance, corrected Zoral. Not yet. But we need their help. We need their unpredictability. 3 days of heated debate followed. Historical records of Earth's wars played on endless loops in the chamber. Primitive though they were, humans had displayed an uncanny gift for warfare, developing more ways to destroy each other in their brief civilizational history than most species had conceived in millions of years. Finally, a decision was reached. A delegation would be sent to Earth with an offer: join the fight against the Voidborn, prove humanity's worth, and earn their place among the stars. Commander Elena Reyes of the United Earth Defense Force stood before the delegation in the austere meeting room of Earth's orbital defense platform. Her dark uniform bore minimal insignia. Humanity had learned to distrust excessive military pageantry after centuries of abuse by those who wore it. Yet there was no mistaking the authority in her stance or the intensity in her eyes. "Let me get this straight," she said, studying the holographic display of Voidborn attacks. "You've quarantined Earth for the past 30 years, denying us access to the galactic community because we're too aggressive. But now you want our help fighting an enemy you can't beat." First speaker Zoral had the grace to look uncomfortable. "We miscalculated. We thought your species needed more time to mature. To become more like you," Rise corrected. "Predictable. Safe. We have over 50,000 warships ready to join the fight against the Voidborn," offered Admiral Kresh, who towered over the human representatives. "We merely ask Earth to contribute to this unified effort." Rise exchanged glances with Earth's government representatives before responding. "We'll send one ship." The aliens blinked in confusion, all except Elder Thune, whose ancient face creased into what might have been a smile. "One." Admiral Kresh's translator barely conveyed his incredulity. "This isn't a negotiating tactic, Commander. The Voidborn have destroyed entire civilizations." "One ship," Rise repeated firmly. "The UES Defiance. My ship." "This is absurd," protested an Alliance military advisor. "What can one primitive vessel accomplish against an armada that has decimated our most advanced fleets?" Rise walked to the window, gazing out at Earth, blue, beautiful, and far more fragile than most of its inhabitants realized. "You fight like machines," she said without turning around. "Perfect formations, optimal tactics. The problem is, the Voidborn are better machines. You can't outcalculate them." She turned back to face the delegation. "But humans? We're messy, unpredictable, sometimes brilliantly so. And your single ship will demonstrate this unpredictability." First speaker Zoral asked cautiously. "The Defiance isn't our biggest ship or our most advanced," Rise explained. "But it has the best crew, people who think differently, who've been dismissed as troublemakers or outcasts in our own military because they wouldn't follow conventional wisdom." "Outcasts against an empire of destroyers," mumbled Admiral Kresh. "This seems like desperation rather than strategy." "Sometimes the best weapon isn't the most powerful," Rise countered. "It's the one the enemy doesn't expect or understand. The Voidborn expect your perfect formations and predictable tactics. They won't expect us." Elder Thune moved forward, his ancient eyes studying Rise intently. "There is wisdom in this approach. The Voidborn have adapted to our methods. They have never encountered human tactics." After hours of debate, the Alliance delegation reluctantly agreed. The UES Defiance would join the fight, alone, as requested, while the main Alliance fleet prepared for what might be its final stand at the Arcturus Nexus, the last defensive line before the core systems. As the delegation departed, Elder Thune lingered behind. "Commander Reyes," he said softly, "why only one ship? Surely your chances would improve with more vessels." Reyes smiled slightly. "More ships would mean more oversight, more conventional thinking trying to control us. The Defiance works best when we're free to improvise. You truly believe you can succeed where thousands of our ships have failed?" "No," Rise answered honestly, "but I believe we can show you a different way to fight. And if we fail," she glanced again at Earth through the viewport, "then at least we tried to protect our future in the stars on our own terms." The UES Defiance hung in Earth orbit, a stark contrast to the elegant vessels of the Galactic Alliance. Where Alliance ships were sleek and symmetrical, the Defiance looked almost cobbled together, angular, heavily armored in some sections, bristling with various weapon systems that seemed almost haphazardly attached. Its hull bore scorch marks and patches from previous battles, preserved rather than cosmetically repaired. Inside, Commander Reyes walked the corridors, nodding to crew members as they made final preparations. The ship hummed with nervous energy, fear mixed with excitement and determination. She entered the bridge and surveyed her unconventional command team. Lieutenant Wyatt, tactical, a brilliant strategist court-martialed twice for disobeying orders in previous engagements. Dr. Okonkwo at science, whose radical theories on spatial manipulation had been rejected by academia. Chief Engineer Alvarez, who modified equipment in ways that made safety officers lose sleep. And Lieutenant Commander Singh at navigation, whose flying style had been described as criminally creative. "The Alliance Committee thinks we're insane," Reyes announced, settling into the command chair. "They can't imagine how one ship, especially a human ship, could possibly make a difference against an enemy that's destroying whole worlds." "They've never seen us fight," said Wei, the scar along his jawline tightening as he grinned. "No, they haven't," agreed Reyes. "And that's our advantage. The Voidborn have adapted to Alliance tactics. Predictable, mathematically optimal, and utterly ineffective. We're going to show them both something new." Dr. Okonkwo brought up the tactical display. "The Alliance's entire defensive strategy is built around concentrated firepower and uniform shield harmonics. The Voidborn counter with technologies that disperse energy weapons and penetrate standardized shields. So we don't play by those rules," said Reyes. "Alvarez, how are those modifications to the shield generators coming?" The chief engineer's smile was borderline manic. "Ready, Commander. Random frequency modulation. Completely non-standardized. It's going to make our shield strength inconsistent, but it'll also make it nearly impossible to calibrate weapons against us. And those other special projects I authorized. The ones that violate about 15 different safety protocols." Alvarez laughed. "Also ready." Reyes nodded and turned to the communications officer. "Send our status to Earth Command and the Alliance liaison. We're departing for the Arcturus Nexus." As the Defiance broke orbit, Commander Reyes felt the weight of humanity's future settle onto her shoulders. One ship against an implacable enemy that had defeated entire civilizations. The odds were beyond impossible, but humans had never been particularly good at accepting the impossible. That, perhaps more than anything else, was what the galaxy needed now. The wild card strategy. The UES Defiance dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Arcturus Nexus, the massive intersection of 7 major trade routes that had made this sector the economic heart of the Galactic Alliance. Now it was the final line of defense before the core systems, and it was already under attack. The main view screen displayed a battle already in progress, and it wasn't going well for the Alliance. Their ships maintained perfect geometric formations, their weapons firing in synchronized salvos that splashed harmlessly against the Voidborn vessel's dark energy shields. The Voidborn responded with methodical precision, targeting Alliance ships one by one, their weapons cutting through advanced shields like they weren't even there. "They're using the same tactics they always use," observed Lieutenant Wyatt at Tactical, "and getting the same results." "Admiral Kresh is transmitting," announced the communications officer. "He's demanding to know why we've arrived alone and ordering us to fall into formation with Defense Group Theta." Commander Reyes suppressed a smile. "Inform the Admiral that we appreciate his tactical assessment, but will be operating independently as agreed. Respectfully, of course." "Respectfully," echoed the communications officer with a slight smirk. "Singh," Reyes addressed her navigation officer, "take us in, but not where they expect. I want the approach vector that makes the least mathematical sense." "That's my specialty, Commander," Singh replied, her fingers dancing across the controls as she plotted a course that would have made any Alliance pilot question her sanity. The Defiance accelerated toward the battle zone, but rather than following a direct approach, it executed a series of seemingly random course changes, diving below the ecliptic plane, then spiraling up, cutting across the battlefield at odd angles that defied conventional spatial tactics. The Voidborn fleet is adjusting, reported Dr. Okonkwo, monitoring the enemy movements. But they seem confused by our approach. Their response is delayed. They're used to predictable enemies, Rai said. We target the smallest Voidborn vessel with our main cannons, but don't fire until my mark. The Defiance continued its erratic approach, drawing closer to the Voidborn formation. Alliance ships, still locked in their losing battle, barely seemed to notice the human vessel's unorthodox maneuvers. Now, why? Full spread. The Defiance's weapons unleashed a barrage that, like its flight path, defied conventional tactics. Instead of concentrating fire on the target's most vulnerable systems, the standard approach that the Voidborn had clearly adapted to, the human ship fired a scattered pattern across the entire enemy vessel, its weapons cycling through multiple frequencies and intensities. The results were immediate and dramatic. The Voidborn ship's shields flickered unevenly, failing in several unexpected places. Follow-up shots from the Defiance struck these weaknesses precisely, and for the first time in the battle, a Voidborn vessel suffered significant damage. Their shield algorithms are designed to counter concentrated, consistent attacks, explained Wei, his eyes gleaming as he analyzed the data. They can't adapt fast enough to our changing patterns. All Alliance vessels are hailing us, reported communications. Admiral Kresh is demanding an explanation for our reckless and unauthorized attack pattern. Tell them to watch and learn, Rise replied. Sing, take us through their formation. The path they'd least expect. The Defiance plunged toward the heart of the Voidborn fleet, weaving between the massive enemy vessels with maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. Each time the Voidborn weapons locked on, Sing would execute an unpredictable course change, making targeting solutions obsolete before they could be implemented. Their tactical algorithms rely on predicting our movements based on optimal flight paths, Sing explained as she worked. I'm avoiding anything that could be calculated as optimal or efficient. Alvarez, Ray's call to engineering. Now would be a good time for those special modifications we discussed. With pleasure, Commander, the chief engineer replied. Moments later, the Defiance began ejecting small, seemingly insignificant objects into space. Hundreds of them, scattered in their wake as they flew through the enemy formation. What are those? Demanded Admiral Kresh over the still-open channel. Just some mining charges we repurposed, Rise answered casually. With a few modifications. The mining charges suddenly activated, emitting electromagnetic pulses that synchronized with the Defiance's next weapons barrage. The pulses created momentary disruptions in the Voidborn shields. Tiny, unpredictable windows of vulnerability that lasted less than a second each. It was enough. The Defiance's weapons found their marks, striking critical systems on 3 more Voidborn vessels. They're adapting, called out Wei, changing their shield frequencies to counter our approach. That's what we wanted, Rice said with grim satisfaction. Okonkwo, activate the resonance transmitter. The science officer engaged a device that the Alliance would have considered crude. Essentially a modified communications array that broadcast on multiple frequencies simultaneously, including several that would normally be considered noise. But this noise had a purpose. It carried a signal designed to interfere with the very shield frequencies the Voidborn had just switched to. Another Voidborn ship suffered a catastrophic shield failure, exposing its hull to the Defiance's weapons. The human vessel didn't hesitate, concentrating its fire on the vulnerable target. The remaining Voidborn ships began to adjust their formation, abandoning their methodical approach to focus on the unexpected threat. Their perfect geometric pattern dissolved as they attempted to surround the Defiance. They're finally changing tactics, noted Wei. That's new. It means they recognize us as a threat, Rise replied. Alvarez, initiate Phase 2. The engineer grinned. Deploying the drones, Commander. The Defiance launched dozens of small, unmanned craft, originally designed as maintenance drones, but repurposed with minimal weapons and maximum maneuverability. Each was programmed with a different evasion and attack pattern, creating chaos among the Voidborn targeting systems. Alliance fleet is hailing again, reported communications. They're asking for instructions. Reyes allowed herself a moment of pride. Tell them to break formation. Abandon synchronized attacks. Each ship should adopt individual tactics. The more varied, the better. On the view screen, the battle began to transform. Slowly at first, then with increasing confidence, Alliance vessels broke from their rigid formations. They began employing erratic maneuvers inspired by the Defiance, their attacks becoming varied and unpredictable. The Voidborn response grew increasingly disorganized. Their perfect coordination, their greatest strength against conventional opponents, became a weakness when faced with hundreds of ships acting independently and unpredictably. "It's working," breathed Dr. Okonkwo, watching the tactical display with wonder. Their algorithms can't process so many different attack patterns simultaneously. For 3 hours, the battle raged. The Defiance took heavy damage, shields failing, hull breached in multiple sections, systems failing throughout the ship. But it continued fighting, demonstrating for the Alliance a new way to combat their seemingly invincible enemy. "Voidborn flagship is changing position," announced Y. "They appear to be retreating." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the massive Voidborn command vessel, which had never been defeated in any previous engagement, began a withdrawal maneuver. One by one, the remaining Voidborn ships followed suit, pulling back from the battle. "They can't adapt," Reyes said softly. "Their entire strategy is based on predictable enemies following optimal tactics. When faced with enough chaos and variation, their algorithms fail." The communication system came alive with cheers and expressions of disbelief from across the Alliance fleet. Admiral Kresh's voice cut through the celebrations. "Commander Reyes," he said, his translator struggling to convey the mix of emotions in his tone, "it seems we have much to learn from humanity. The Alliance Council awaits your report and your recommendations for a new defensive strategy." Reyes looked around at her battered bridge, at her exhausted but triumphant crew. "Tell them we'll be happy to help, Admiral. But first, we need repairs, and perhaps a few more human ships to join us." "I believe that can be arranged," Kresh replied, with what might have been respect in his voice. As the Defiance limped toward the Alliance repair facilities, Commander Reyes gazed at the tactical display showing the retreating Voidborn fleet. This wasn't the end of the war. Far from it. The enemy would adapt, learn, and return. But now they faced something they had never encountered before. An adversary that embraced unpredictability as a strength rather than a weakness. The Alliance had been fighting a war of technology and numbers, trying to overpower an enemy that had mastered those aspects of warfare. Humanity had shown them a different path, a war of creativity, adaptability, and the willingness to abandon perfect strategies in favor of unexpected approaches. "Send a message to Earth Command," Reyes told her communications officer. "Tell them to prepare the fleet. The quarantine is over. Humanity is joining the galactic community, not as the barbarians they feared, but as the innovators they desperately needed." As the message was transmitted, Reyes permitted herself a small smile. Throughout human history, their greatest weakness had often been their inability to agree on the right way to do things. Their constant arguments, their competing methodologies, their stubborn individualism, all had sometimes held them back. Now, those same traits might save a galaxy. The Voidborn had conquered worlds with ease until they met humanity, a species that had spent its entire history learning from conflict, adapting to overcome stronger opponents, and refusing to accept defeat even when logic dictated it was inevitable. The Alliance had offered humanity the stars in exchange for their help. What they hadn't realized was that in doing so, they were gaining far more than a temporary ally against the Voidborn. They were gaining a new perspective on the universe itself, one where perfection was sometimes the enemy of success, and where the chaos of human thinking could create possibilities that no algorithm could predict. It was a perspective the galaxy desperately needed in the dark times ahead.